We've asked for medical. So what we did, as you see the cost, we then came back, as I did with the patrol side, to negotiate a deal. Because I think it's called, it's all about getting the best dollar for buck. So I went over to Chief Sweet and Captain Taz and I said, listen, what is the least that you need to get us through the day, each and every day? And they said, Sheriff, we need a nurse. If we don't get this nurse, we can't take outside contracts. Outside contracts bring us, well, they're going to bring us about over $800,000 this coming year in revenue to the county. So I told the commissioners, I said, I need to know where we're sitting at with this, because if you can't tell us that we're going to have a nurse, I can't guarantee you the outside contracts. Currently today we have 46 outside contracts. Just do simple math, 46 times 35. That's how or times 65, about $65 a day. That's revenue for the sheriff's office. This week, earlier this week, because I could not get a commitment from the commissioners, I sent out letters to all our outside contracts. If I can't have the nurse, I can't do outside contracts, because I'm not going to put the sheriff's office, NAFCare, or the citizens of Lewis County in any area of liability where we're going to get a lawsuit coming our way, because then they're going to say, Sheriff, it's on you. I'm named in every single lawsuit that comes down the pike. So what I did was I had to send out letters to our 3 outside contracts telling them that next year I will not be able to provide service to you, which means we will not bring in $850,000 in revenue. So without the nurse, I am not going to put our folks, the staff in the county, in a liability situation. So that's where we're at. So I don't know if things change between now and then, if I'd ever get those contracts back. We'll still do what we do here in the county, provide the best service we can. We'll take a population up to 210 inmates. That's what our current medical staff can handle. But when you're bringing in people that have cancer, that have debilitating issues, that have mental health issues, that have dementia, that have all these things, how much medical staff can take care of these folks? You can only put so much on medical staff before things get bad, and that's not where we want to go. The direction is, if we don't get a medical staff on board, things are going to get bad, and that's not what we're going to do for us.
I have a question.
Go ahead, sir.
Do these other counties or these other entities that have contracts with the Lewis County Jail, do they pick or cherry pick those individuals coming across? Say they had 2 guys in there with cancer, do they send them to you?
No. Okay. No. So what they will try to do is Olympia will try to send their baddest people down here. Captain Taz is very good about filtering them out. It basically says, you're a troublemaker, you can go back. We work with Thurston County, we work with Department of Corrections. We're still going to negotiate a contract with Department of Corrections, because if our jail population is probably sitting around 200, we could probably bring in 2 or up to 10 DOC offenders. The issue is, though, is our population now will be, starting in 2019, will be sitting at 210. Because that's what we can handle. That's what our medical staff can handle. That's what our folks can handle. We're not going to be able to take, we've had population up to 267. The jail was built to handle up to 356 people. That is if they're parked in there like cordwood. The jail can take 300. However, in 2008, we lost 10 corrections deputies. 10. So we can't do alternative sanctions, home monitoring. We don't do any of that because of the cutbacks of corrections deputies. So some of those were revenues. Some of those were basically came out equal, but we lost 10 deputies. So therefore, we can't bring our jail population to 300 unless you're going to give us 10 back. We did the business module. You're looking at about $1 million investment up front to even get 10 additional, which is very challenging in the corrections field.
And it's about 1.5 million for staff. I mean, you had to do some construction stuff, but 1.5 million
right.
additional.
When the jail was built, though, it wasn't built to handle our current situations. Right now, if we had a whole housing unit available for just females, we could bring it all in, because or isolations, you know, single cells, people who have issues, whether they're assaultive behaviors, whether they have mental health issues, medical issues. They have to be single cells, right? Because we have to take care of those individuals. We're mandated by court. So those are challenges that we're facing each and every day. Go ahead.
I forgot to do something. We have a new person that just came in, and anybody comes in, would you announce who you are?
Hi, I'm Brian Green. I don't know, a lot of you probably know me. I have the Liberty's Champion channel, so I'm here recording the meeting today.
Okay.
It's good to see you, Brian.
It's good to see you too.
What's the revenue per day per person generated when we bring inmates in, and what's our daily cost per inmate? So basically, what falls to the bottom line?
Chief, do you have that answer?
Well, the sheriff did mention that, you know, on average, when we have a contract inmate that comes in, and Captain Taz can elaborate on that as well. As far as the cost goes, we have a daily bed rate that we charge them. To get an actual price on what that inmate costs, it's across the board, because we don't know what kind of medical conditions they have, what kind of needs they have, how long they're going to stay, stuff like that.
Correct.
But, you know, and the one thing that we have with our contract agencies, we have local contracts with Centralia, Chehalis, and all the local cities. The ones that the sheriff's talking about is the main revenue contracts are those outside of Lewis County.
Yep.
The Olympia, the Thurston County, and the DOCs. Now with those, and I could give you like a rough estimate if we number crunch that down. But with those, let's take Department of Corrections for an example. We may get tomorrow, you know, we don't know how many DOCs will come in overnight, okay? So that is going to increase our cost, because we don't know how many DOCs are going to be booked into our jail within the 24-hour period. Out of, say, 5 that get booked in, 2 of them may have medical issues. 2 of them may have to have special housing and stuff like that. So those costs do fluctuate every day. It just depends on the inmate. But we do actually have a bed cost that we charge those contracts, and that's the average cost that we just figure out what kind of our expenditures are every day with how many contracts we have. And we've been averaging about 30, 40 contracts a day. Sometimes it gets above 50.
So it's contract people, bodies, right?
Yes, yeah. And
not 30.
It's outside contracts.
Outside contracts. And we charge them a bed rate per day, depending on how many of their inmates are in our facility.
And is there a goal for a portion of that to essentially fall to the bottom line then? I mean, are we bringing those in at cost?
Well, basically it costs well over $100 if you really did the math as far as the corrections deputy and everything. But when the bigger the population, the less the cost is, because of the food is a little bit cheaper, and you get that. So when I first started, the cost was below $50 a day, actually, per bed. At the time, they estimated it would cost about $93 to actually house them, but we've raised those prices up. We continue to raise those prices because we're like one of the cheapest. We are the cheapest on the west side of the mountains as far as housing costs, but we've had
cheapest what we charge.
As far as charging outside agencies. That's why they come to us. However, I think we're like 50 cents more, because Centralia now goes, since long-term people, to Yakima even for long-term. But the cost saving, it might be $2. I might be looking at that. But really, we're very competitive when it comes to outside contracts. That's why they stay with us. In 2016, Mason County did a contract with us because they were in a political move to try to get a new jail and do all. So we took their prisoners, and we made a substantial amount of money in revenues based on that, because they brought their contracts down us. Now, well, they reversed their opinion and said, we're not going to contract with anybody. We're just not going to accept people. So that's what they call jail restrictions. So can you imagine having a misdemeanor warrant for driving on suspended and not being able to take them because your jail's full? And that's what they're doing. Mason County charges over $100 a day if they have a DOC prisoner or somebody else in there. That's a lot of cost. So we're sitting around 64 bucks, but I say 65 because our DOC is a little bit higher of a rate. It's like $69. So if we amortize it together, we average about 65. That's how we get a fairly good, accurate number. But because of the medical, we've cut it out. So that's
and each contract agency has a choice. They could say, hey, we want to reserve these many beds for a year, and so that reduces the daily bed rate cost because we are able to project that and predict that.
And that's Olympia, right?
Yes. Yeah. And then the other contract agencies can do like what we call just an a la carte. So whatever they bring in is what we charge them, and that's an elevated cost per day. So that kind of fluctuates.
You had a question.
Yeah, real quick question going back to
NAF care.
So when you talk about the nurse, Sheriff, that was a proposal to eliminate or lessen this cost increase.
Yes. Right.
Okay. And if that's the case, what's your vision as how the nurse would work with NAF care? Is that
the nurse would be hired by NAF care.
Oh, okay.
So the nurse is just shy of $121,000.
Okay.
So I still would like to have the 2 deputies because I want to make sure that we're meeting the standards. But on the medical side, it's nice to have that medical assistant. I get that. But if we really need the nuts and bolts of how the business is ran, what makes us function, what can keep these contracts going, what can keep us generating revenue. And I told them $121,000 is what I need. I left that proposal in the middle of August. I gave till the week of September 4th. There was no response. The Sheriff's Office sent those letters out, as we should, because we need to provide our partners, that we call partners, Olympia, Thurston, and Department of Corrections, the opportunity to go search and find somebody else to take their contracts. That's not fair to us. They're going through the same budget process that we're all going through here today. So if I can't get that answer, is that fair for me to leave them on the hold when I say, hey, I can't get that nurse? We just don't have the money. Go ahead.
So did their letters say, Chief there, Sheriff, did the letters say that you weren't going to contract, or did it say we're in budget negotiations and we'll
the problem with that is, you know, once the letter goes out, it goes out. And I'll put myself in Olympia Police Department's shoes. They received this letter because they're going through the budget cycle just like we are, you know, trying to figure out where they're going to house their prisoners and how much it's going to cost them. They received this letter. If I was in their shoes, I would start looking for something else because there's no guarantee that I'm going to be able to put my people down here in Olympia. So the unfortunate piece is, because of those partnerships that the sheriff has built over the last 4 years, we were backed into a corner, and we had to send this letter out to give them ample time to find places to put their prisoners.
No, my question was,
unfortunately, we will not have any control over, say the budget process goes through its course, and the commissioners come back, you know, in a month or a month and a half from now and say, hey, we got that $209,000. We came up where to get that, okay? We will do what we can to go back to those partners and say, hey, we got things figured out on our end. The unfortunate thing is we have no control over where they go.
Right.
And we very well could lose them. And that's what we did explain, you know, to the commissioners prior to that letter going out.
So I want to get this in, pardon me a second.
Yeah.
My question was, what did the letter say? There's no hope, or the letter say we're in budget negotiations? I just wanted to know what that corresponded.
Basically, the letter says, start looking for somebody else because we can't guarantee you next year. That's what it says as a whole. And everybody here knows my brother's the sheriff of Thurston County. He's been providing us contracts since Mason County pulled out, and they've been bringing people down. I'm not going to ruin a partnership and just say, hey, John, in December saying, hey, I can't get you to it. I'm not going to do that to them, and I'm not going to do it to the partners we have with Olympia or DOC. Decisions have been made in other county entities when I made this request, so I knew all I asked for was, just give me 51%. Tell me there's a chance. That's all I asked. I didn't get a phone call. So if you're running a business and you have partners that you do business with, you better make a decision. And those decisions are not easy. But I'm not going to lose the partnerships because I may ask them for a favor, or I may have to come back because they failed to make a decision, and I'm going to have to go back to them and say, hey, listen, we got that money. What do you think? You think you can give me contracts? I don't know. Go ahead.
So I'm still not clear on what your request is. When you say we want to hire a nurse, you are not talking about the county hiring a nurse. So what you want is, without it up there, I can't recall what the dollar amount is. You want that dollar amount to
go to the NAFCare contract.
So we have an existing NAFCare contract, which I believe you said can't stipulates that they will take up to 200
right.
and some folks.
Right.
We want to add funds to that contract specifically so they will provide
an extra nurse.
An extra nurse.
And the reason for that is because the increased medical needs. Now, we don't have to give them a nurse, and you guys can say, well, they entered into a contract. NAFCare can end that contract anytime they want. They can give us notice that we're done providing medical service. What we're trying to do is work with them to a point.
So I think we asked.
So there's, just real briefly, I'm just going to say something on the nurse part of that. So NAFCare, the contract says average daily population is 250. NAFCare needed to have that number of 250, and I explained this to a couple of the members here. NAFCare needed that ADP, average daily population, 250, to actually put in language for a surcharge. If we were to ever in our facility to go over 250 ADP, average daily population, then they would give us they would charge us extra for that contract cost. With the way our facility is and our FTEs, I highly doubt we'll ever get to an ADP of 250, okay? Because that takes an average population where you're over 250 of population. And when we get to 250, we go on restricted booking, okay? And we're almost there again this week. The one thing that I do want to add though, one of the main reasons, and it isn't because of revenue. Revenue is good. Every year since, I think we've given a report, every past 5 years, we've produced revenue. The jail has produced revenue and given back to the county. What I'm asking is, we have to mitigate this liability, right? And there's certain standards that we have to meet now. We lost 7 corrections deputies 10 years ago. 10. And we everything's changed. The rights of inmates have changed. The whole system has changed. So as far as healthcare, the Standard of Care Act that we have to look at is, and this is when NAFCare comes up to me and says, hey, we've done everything we can. They've donated 40 more hours of nurse time because we already have a nurse there. We need another nurse. We have LPNs and nurses. We only have 1 nurse right now, and then the manager who actually fills in as a nurse. So his management responsibilities isn't being done because he has to do nurse time. So that's why they came to us and said, hey, we've done everything we can. We need this additional nurse. And we reviewed, and I don't know what the acronym stands for, but it's the NCCHC compliancy, and it's a healthcare compliancy standard. And so there's a lot of factual information of why, if we stay with our current system right now, our coffee cup's full. And if we continue, we actually have to expand on it, and we have to have better medical attention to our inmates, because there's a lot of requirements that we have to uphold. With our current situation and the rise in increased inmate population, we know now we're at the level that we either have to reduce our inmate population or we need to have that other nurse. Okay, and then it also goes, one little quick thing, I know we gotta go. The one little thing I also wanted to, the 2 deputies that we're asking, the corrections deputies, that is, I'm not talking revenue, I'm not talking population. That is a National Institute of Corrections standard with ACLU, Disabilities Rights Washington, when we have to change the system that we have right now in our facility. We have to man another control tower 24 hours a day now to allow the inmates that are on restrictive housing, and it's one unit, so there's a control tower that sees this one unit. Right now, we don't have enough manpower to man that tower 24/7. And with this new national requirement through the NIC, ACLU, Disabilities Rights Washington, that's why I'm asking them to, hey, use some of this revenue that we're producing, give that revenue back to us so we can man that control tower, so we can be under that NIC standard that we need to meet. Disabilities Rights Washington, and I'm proud to say this, we've had 2 audits from Disabilities Rights Washington. And DRW is a facility that, or an organization off of Governor Inslee, to go over and just kind of manage local jails, county jails, to see what kind of conditions are going on in the jail. And for the most part, we've had a very good report card. But that's one thing that's always kind of pending, is this 23 hours in, 1 hour out that we need to change. We need to change it to 22 and 2. And to do that, we need 2 extra deputies, because right now, the amount of deputies I have 1 deputy to every 80 inmate right now. And so the normal response would be, well, can't you reallocate the FTEs, the deputies that you have now? We've already looked at that. We've already reallocated, we've already reassigned shifts, schedules, stuff like that. And we're just asking, we need these 2 deputies to get to uphold that national standard for us, because it's a liability and we need to mitigate that liability. Hopefully that answers those questions.
So are you out of compliance with the national standards? And is there, what is the impact to the corrections, your corrections budget, if you're out of compliance?
So there's national standards, and that's where we're trying to get to. It has not become law yet.
Okay.
But with the ACLU and the Disability Rights of Washington, it is a matter of time. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to do preventive maintenance. And that means we need to get to that national standards. And Chris did a great job explaining why we need that, because it is going to come. It will come. I can't tell you it will be today, tomorrow, the next day. It will come. And I would love for us to be ahead of the game and say, listen, we are meeting those national standards. We do have, when DRW comes in, they're looking at everything for handicapped people to come in wheelchairs and all kinds of disabilities. What are we doing? When Chris says we got a great report card, and we have a very good rapport with them, because they come to us, they give us these suggestions. Now, we can't do everything they suggest, but we share that information with them. We say, and we bring them back. We encourage them. Look at what we're doing, because there are many corrections facilities out there that aren't meeting the requirements that DRW is asking, and we're trying to be this standard. And right now, we're not there yet. We've got great staff. We've got great people on board. We're doing everything we can with Band-Aids. Someday the Band-Aids aren't going to fit anymore, and that's where we're sitting at.
Okay,
Lindsay?
Go ahead.
What is your net profit year to date on your contract beds?
Net profit.
The 580. The revenue is 580 to date, and that was
Revenue, but you have made $580,000 in the bank on beds. That's what I'm asking.
So
after you've taken everything
out of the charges that we charge the contract companies, we're at 580,000 to date
for outside contracts.
For outside.
Those are your collections.
You don't cover the costs.
We don't. No. So any like medical costs for a contract inmate, we bill that agency.
Right. But what I'm saying is basically what I'm trying to get at is it actually profitable for us to run these contract beds, or are we spinning where we're not making enough money to generate this kind
I
of
think if you talk revenues,
not revenue. We're not talking revenue stream.
You're talking about profit.
I think there is.
What's in our pocket at the
I think
end
there
of
is
the
money in the
month.
pocket. I think there is money in the county pocket,
yeah.
and if you're just talking, so let's say we get rid of the outside contracts. just like you're saying. We're not.
That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, if we got rid of the outside contract, we're not going to get rid of any more manpower. We're still asking for everything the same. So if you have 210 or if you have 240, that extra 30 is the money you make. That's profit, because you don't increase your staffing, you don't increase anything else. And
it should show on your bottom line. You should be able to send it to us as to, this is exactly how much we put in the bank at the end of the year that's free and clear.
Well, I think...
That's what I'm saying. The bottom line for the budget on the jail is $8 million. We bring in 1.2. It is not a money-making.
I understand that. I'm trying to find out if we are actually, for all the effort that it goes through to do contract bed spaces, if we only make $10 a month putting it, is it worth the hassle?
But here's the deal: is no matter what, we're still going to be allotted $8 million. We're still going to be, but the sheriff's office will still receive $16 million to operate the facility, operations and corrections. Quite honestly, I don't care about revenues. The sheriff's office should never be involved in a revenue-generating business in the first place. We should be here to represent the community, and if we want to charge the local agencies, we charge them for the housing that we have. The responsibility of the sheriff's office is to provide a jail facility.
Yes, and the responsibility for the entire community is
Right.
to figure out how to do this in the most effective manner.
I agree.
If contract beds are worth it, great. If all we are doing is spending time on management and making $10 a month, we maybe need to look at putting our efforts elsewhere. That's all. It's just where does the dollar end? I'm not saying it's good or bad. Just do we have the
Right,
numbers?
but if you didn't bring in the, let's say we're projected for outside, we're projected this year $870,000. I don't know where that money goes. I'm being honest. I have no idea where this revenue goes. I know I'm going to get $16 million to operate the sheriff's office. Wherever that $800,000 goes, I have not a clue. I wish I could tell you, because I could tell you where my bank account goes or whatever it does.
Yes.
I can't tell you.
In my business, it's
But one part of that too is like what Becky said. You know, consider, I mean, we're talking 30, 40 inmates in our contract out of a 250 inmate population. So that number that you're talking about is going to be relatively small anyway, and maybe and we could get those figures probably of what it costs. And I don't know if Captain Todd
We should be able to add
trace.
that to our list of, we respond to that.
So another way to look at this is just to kind of reflect back, is you're being very adamant that without the expenditure of the additional funds in order to get the nurse, the revenues from the contracted inmates could potentially go away.
Correct.
But then on the other hand, you're saying, well, it doesn't cost us any more to have these, and so it doesn't matter if we know whether we're making profit off it or not.
Well,
that's not the point. So you see why it's a little conflicting. And
So and the reason why we say that is because if we have to reduce population, I think the prosecutor says his filing is up 34%. I mean, there's a lot of local increases that we're getting local inmates, not contract inmates. Okay, but to us, what Captain Taz does to mitigate the inmate population every day, he starts releasing contract inmates that are here, okay? So that is our ability to fluctuate our population, to remove those contracts. If we reduce those and completely eliminate those contracts, we're going to fill this jail up to our maximum population with local people. We just will eventually. So that's where, and I hope I'm answering your question. Yes, the revenue from the contracts is I think good for the county, because without that they're not going to get the $700,000, $800,000 average that we've returned to them for the last 5 years. But the one thing that will not happen was they won't get the revenue if we eliminate those contracts, because we're going to have to mitigate that inmate population. Okay, so we won't have any contracts at all. So there will be no revenue from those outside contracts coming in, because we won't accept them in our facility to manage that population.
But you're saying that any space that might be that we're currently, and again, I may have just misunderstood. Sounds like what you're saying, that we're currently releasing Lewis County inmates in order to?
No.
Okay, no, I
No,
misunderstood.
we
That's
release the
kinda what it sounds.
contracts to allow Lewis County inmates. And the prosecutor filings are increases, the court remands from our judges have increased. So, and this is what Captain Taz does on a daily basis, is play that game, that shell game, and getting those contract inmates out.
But wasn't
So
there a time when we had to reduce the current Lewis County inmates and folks around were?
Correct, we've done that,
And-
we've done that 3 times over the last.
And we're about
4 or 5
ready to do
months,
it
right?
again.
Yeah.
So
So
what's,
restricted booking.
with the increase in local inmates that are happening, what is the likelihood that the number of contracts would have to decrease anyway to a point that wouldn't justify the $125,000 spent on the nurse?
We would stop it, we have to stop at 250. We try to mitigate around 250 and
But what's the likelihood that that's going to happen? Because the nurse is going to cost about $120,000. The county makes $800,000 on contracts. So once you take out that $120,000, you're looking at math. But you're not getting the full $800,000 this year. Sorry, not my strong suit. They're taking in, not making. Right, but that they're taking it, yeah. So, but it's cost recovery, right? So it is money that is actually going back to the county's bottom line. So I mean, revenue is good. But if the increase in local inmate population is going to go up, is it going to go up so much that we're not going to make back the money that we paid for the nurse
anyway? Yeah.
Right.
Well,
So basically, what we try to do on contracts, we try to manage between 20 and 40. The low end is 20, the high end is 40. We have reached max at 267 over a weekend, a busy weekend, and usually we're filter out more DOC. So if you have the 3 contracts, right? We filter out. Captain Taz works daily to get DOC out. They're sometimes the most troublesome because of the situations that we're in. We get them out as quickly as possible. We generally are able to keep the Olympia and the Thurston County contracts more. They're not as much as the problem, so it is getting in there, but with the medical, I mean, they're good about, we're gonna be good around 210. If we got rid of the contracts, our average daily population would probably be around, what, Captain, about 200, maybe, around 200. And then we would probably cap out and do restricted booking at 210 because of the medical situation. Now, if the judges all of a sudden on Thursday say, hey, everybody on a suspended ticket is going to jail, that increases it. And then we work on ways of getting others out, or we go on restrictive booking. We've been on restrictive booking. The first time since this jail's been built, we've been on restrictive booking 3 times this year already. And that's because we went over 250. And that is a lot of people coming into our facility, and that's a lot of medical needs. That's huge. And I would encourage anybody here, if you really want to see where we're at, do a tour. Captain Taz would be more than happy to show you what our folks see on a daily basis, dealing with mental health, dealing with medical issues, anything you want to see, there's going to be something to see there. I can't predict where we're going to be in 5 years. I know that we may have to look at different housing for a whole new female unit. We had one, I think, what we have, one housing unit to hold 12 females, and we only had 1 toilet. Mm-hmm. We had to put in another 12.
24 feet.
Yeah, it is.
Ready to go.
Yes. There's never enough bathrooms, so we had to install another one, So we're trying to work these things out. We're just trying to do what's best for them. And as far as the revenues, I mean, we're going to get the dollars, anything extra. But I always say, if there's 1.2 million in revenue, that's 1.2. Now that doesn't cover $8 million, but it's going somewhere.
Right.
I can tell you.
If you spent 1.3.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the question is,
Yeah.
$1.2 million in revenue is great, but if the county had to send 1.4 to house them, it's just not clear, I guess, to the group that.
But we pay for that. We're all paying for that anyway. I mean, that's our tax dollars that goes into it. And the thing about it is, the commissioner's probably talking, it's unfunded mandates. We're at a 1% cap. And because we can't fund additional, that's why we're sitting where we're at financially in the county.
I think that, you know, the main issue is the local population.
Yes.
That is up, so you're gonna be paying those costs regardless of those contracts, because I don't think removing 40 inmates from the facility is gonna allow you to eliminate staff.
Yeah,
Or make a big cut.
I'm sure there's a certain amount that's fixed cost, right? The building
Right.
is the same every month, the power is the same every month. But per inmate, there's gotta be other costs associated that the county has to cover as far as food
Medical.
and,
Right.
you know, other things like that, you know, if that was kind of black and white, I think it would make it.
Right.
The medical
So what
is
are we
what
paying-
gets us.
Sid, what are we paying per person, or what are they paying us per person, say?
So 65 if they do the bed.
65.
And what's the cost per person?
65.
No,
That's-
that's
the
what
cost
you're
to
being paid.
to
What is
operate.
county's
For Lewis
cost?
County, what is the county's
What's
cost?
it costing us per person
Yeah, I don't-
fee-wise?
It's $130.
I think
I
we're
think
really
it's-
looking
I think it's like 93.
We charge, okay, we're running a hotel for, you know.
Yeah.
not
No, I get it.
voluntary
Yeah.
Lots of
hotel.
hot.
And we charge
much it.
$65 for this hotel, but it costs us $135?
For basically, if you look at all the costs going out, yes. But here's the deal is, it wouldn't cost us any more, the cost kind of evens out once you go past, because we have the same amount of corrections deputies, okay, that work the facility as if you had 1 inmate or 240 inmates. So that cost is still gonna be there, right? So whether you had 1 inmate or 240 inmates, you're still gonna pay this amount. It doesn't matter. We can only have 100 inmates and we're still paying this amount. So we're trying to use revenues to kind of slim down the cost.
I think the question would be not necessarily what's the cost, what's the fluctuating cost per inmate. The fixed cost is what the fixed cost is.
Yeah.
What is the fluctuating cost
Yeah.
per inmate?
And that's
Is
the-
that $10 a day? Is that $50 a day? I mean, what's it cost?
I think that would, I couldn't answer that.
Can we?
I think
something like that
Becky's
together?
gonna,
Can you put something that,
well,
Yeah, we can
all
work
the,
on it.
all the
I'll work
figures
with
are
Chris
there.
and we'll
It's-
look at it.
okay,
You
so
basically
Becky
need
and
a
Chris will
P&L.
work on that one. We'll put that on our list of questions to answer. Some of these can't be answered today.
What's
So-
kitchen cost? Sorry.
So the kitchen costs, we actually contract with a company called CFM. And they actually provide we have a commercial kitchen in the jail, and they provide food services to us. So because of the current inmate population, and there are is it a 3 or 5%? Is it a 3 or 5% increase?
Every year?
Yeah.
3%.
3%. We actually have to ask for that additional cost because they're elevating the food cost for that contract for our facility. So, and it goes to because of the higher population, and it comes to the next year's percentage increase that they're charging us for that contract.
Do they provide labor and the
Yes.
actual
Yes.
food itself?
Yes, sir.
So that's the total cost of the jail kitchen contract.
Highlight it.
Yeah. 379,285, which is the preliminary amount budgeted for 2019 without the request that's or that.
I wanted to just add on to what the sheriff said about unfunded mandates, and that's a piece that we're putting on everybody's budget notes about what are some of the issues. So medical, if somebody's on Medicaid, their insurance stops when they get into
Yeah,
our jail.
so all of us are paying for that. So when an inmate comes in, it's not the contracts, because the contracting agencies pay for that, the county, you come in. If they had Medicaid coming in, they automatically lose Medicaid as soon as they enter our door and get booked. We all are paying for it now. So let's say we had an individual, I think had a gallbladder. They come in, they need a gallbladder removed. So that costs overtime because you gotta have a deputy sitting on them. You've gotta have all these issues going on, and then removing the, we're paying for that. We try, now we have a billing gal that does the best she can with Medicare to try to save the taxpayers' dollars, but we're paying a little bit of it. We're gonna pay some dollars for it.
Yeah, they're Medicaid or Medicare.
Yeah,
That's
so we
stop.
pay, so we brought in an individual, who was being charged with a pretty serious case. He had cancer. We had to pay for him to go and get seen by a doctor. We had to pay for everything. All of us in this room had to pay for that.
So the federal or state and federal programs, Medicare, Medicaid, stop with incarceration. Have you ever looked at if you've got somebody that you know you're going to have long term, that sign them up to see you through the Apple program or whatever?
No, they can't get Apple until they're
It's suspended because of incarceration.
Yep.
Okay, so any other kinds, I mean, can you go directly to Kaiser and sign
No,
them up?
but so what we've been doing with the help of our health department, specifically Katie Strosick, her and I have been brainstorming of how we can get additional funds coming in from the state. So the BHO provides us with some funding support for medication costs for mental health. So we actually get a reimbursement process now from the state to actually reimburse us for mental health costs, and that's up to $75,000
For medication.
For medication. For medication only.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that Katie did was she was able to get the state health department to fully fund us if we have inmates that come in with HIV or AIDS. And those medications, because they're very expensive medications, we get those fully funded as well. So we're kind of looking into those alternative approaches because literally the federal, Apple, all that, it gets suspended when they're incarcerated.
I just wondered what would happen if you signed them up for a standalone Kaiser Permanente policy.
I wish there was the great answer, because those are great questions, because we've been trying to answer those for a number of years.
And we go to the legislature every year.
Yeah, and it's got to go through the federal government, I guess, on this. But it is challenging. I mean, especially, bringing someone in that has cancer or has a debilitating illness, dialysis. We pay for that. I mean, those are challenges that we face, and that's not even dealing with mental health issues or giving them prescription medication's huge.
Brian has a comment.
Yeah, I have a question here. Now, when they lose their Medicaid, when they're admitted to the jail, is that upon conviction or just suspicion, even if they're on suspicion of a crime?
It's if they're incarcerated.
Just as soon as they get incarcerated.
So it doesn't matter if
Get
they're
suspended.
convicted?
Nope.
If their book's there.
That's
Yes.
it? Okay, thank you.
And we had to go through the state legislature to get coverage for folks who are leaving the jail, who were on Medicaid or Medicare. Before, there was this lag. They would come out, they wouldn't have their medication, they need their medication, and now it's an easier move from jail and getting back to your Medicare.
I know in my personal life with medical stuff, that insurance companies pay one price for services, and the cash payer generally pays a different price. Is there somebody that negotiates on behalf of the county when paying medical bills to make sure we're?
Yes.
We get the lowest, like a Medicare price is what we do.
And then the state formulary pricing is what we go on.
Okay.
So
One other piece I was going to say, that we're convening a group from the judges and prosecutor, the clerk, and the sheriff's office to talk about, we have people that we used to get money for, and now when they're charged for different things, district court said they had 3 people in, bing, 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 but because of the change in state law, we used to get $2,000 per each one of those people. We don't get that anymore. There are some folks that we know are indigent, but there's no chance for them to pay anymore. It's a big problem. And then putting people into jail when we've got, it's full. We had the sheriff's office take a look at what would it be like if you got more money to open up the whole thing, then status quo, or just go down to local prisoners. I think we all agreed at that point, we don't want to spend the $1 million to change it and the $1.5 million for staff. So we moved it down. As Jonathan said, and I don't want to, it's kind of a money pit. We have to do this work. It's how do we do it with fighting the unfunded mandates, fighting the way people are sentenced, fighting the way that people have their insurance. It caused a lot of friction between us when we're talking about dollars, and we have restricted budget. So it's an ongoing issue, and appreciate all the conversation. Becky, you probably...
No, I just wanna close. We have to, just a note, we're gonna have to reschedule the Superior Court meeting that was scheduled at 11:30. So I'll get that on the calendar. So I appreciate everybody's comments. I think it was a good discussion.
Any other comments or any other questions you have that we need to research? Because Reva's making this list of any certain questions to be answered, or...
Well, I appreciate the hard work that the sheriff's office does to protect us in the community and all the challenges that they face, and the fact that you're able to operate in spite of those. I thank you for your service.
Yes, that's
Well,
true.
I want everybody to know, as we talk, obviously there's passion, right? But would you rather have passion or someone says, I don't care, or I don't? When we speak with passion, it's because everybody here in uniform believes what we're doing is the right thing. We didn't get into this to be CPAs, we didn't get into this to be budget analysis. What we got into this business is really protect and serve and provide service to our community. These are things that are pressed upon us. That's why we have people like Becky and Steve and Eric to look at these budget issues. Our requests are this. Remember, as kids, we always wanted this. Remember, we had the big list of all the cool items we wanted on the Christmas, and then your parents would say, okay, what do you really want? If mom and dad bought you one gift, what would it be? That's what we're talking about here today. What is that one gift? And we say, I'll always ask, as long as I'm sheriff, I'm going to always ask for more people. The reason is that's my obligation to our community. We need to get that staffing up. Population is not decreasing, it's increasing. Crime is not decreasing, it's increasing. Those things. But to live in the Lewis County is a great pleasure to live in, because we have a lot of autonomy here, a lot of things. That's why we live here, not somewhere else. We want to continue that service. I'm just letting you know that someday that service may not be the same service as you received as you once did. And we're trying to keep it together. So thank you guys for listening. I appreciate it. I may not have answered every single question, but you guys can call me. Don't call 911, just call over there. I'll be over at the office. I'm more than available, and we can sit down and have a discussion if we didn't clearly present our case. Thank you guys for your time.
I was going to say, this is happening statewide. Counties talking about these particular issues. We're not unusual. Thank you.
Thank you.